Sure. So can you hear me, Cheryl?
Yep.
Okay. So this individual is going to work hand in glove with Chris and the other members of the tech department. She has pretty wide sweeping capabilities. In a nutshell, she should be able to do many of the network capability issues that only Chris wrestles with right now, but can do everything down to like the repairs that some of the other individuals on the team can do. Plus, she has significant background in integrating curriculum and assessment into the tech world, that the hardware pieces of the tech world as well. So she's got a kind of wide skill set and can do a whole bunch of different things. Chris is listening in the other room, and I'm afraid I'm butchering some of this, but basically she has a curriculum and assessment background, an IT background, director's experience, and was historically a member of our team as well. So she's known, can hit the ground running, and wants to come back and work with us again. So
Awesome. And then I had one other question on the 220 agreement, and it said it was for 9 open seats. Is that 9 additional seats to what we have now, or is that a total of 9 students that we have in our district?
So those relate to the 9 remaining students that fall under the Chapter 220 program. So
Okay.
that program was phased out several years ago, and now students that were in it are moving through the system. So I think we're at 8th grade and then have some high schoolers, and then they'll all transition to the high school next year, or we'll just be at the high school.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Say, if I'll approve, say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, this motion is approved. Public input, recess, former portion of the meeting to entertain comments or questions on the agenda items. Anybody would like to address the board? I don't know if we have anybody in the other room.
So in the comment room, we just have Mr. Bennon, and I'll note that Dan Thielen has joined us to observe our meeting tonight. He's joining our team in the fall, so he's in there just hanging out and saying hello to all of us. You can see him waving in there. So,
Welcome, Dan.
Yep.
All right, reconform former portion of the meeting for board discussion and interaction. Under new business, capital improvement projects for 2020 and 21.
So this was brought to us 2 weeks ago. Steve and I were here discussing our capital improvement projects. The proposed list of items, if we break it down, is some roofing schedules, some asphalt, concrete, and brick repair, 2 LED lighting projects at Shepherd Hills and Carrollton that were previously approved in the overall LED plan. We have a digital control conversion for the high school. Those are the projects at about $1,007,000. As we discussed last time, we built in a contingency for unforeseen issues that come up during the year. And depending on where the bids come in, we have a couple of projects listed below that we'd like to work on next. One would be the West Middle School field behind, trying to grade that and make it into a usable resource for both the school and youth programs. And then the second would be putting digital controls into Deerfield as well, and getting our systems integrated and up and running to be as efficient as possible.
We have a motion.
So Neglia moves to approve the budget as stated, or the line item as stated.
Grabowski seconds.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just would like to maybe at some point in time get an idea of, like, I mean, I think this is great. We're looking at projects that are going to sustain us for a lifetime, or for a lifetime of the items. But I just always kind of wondering what's next. What's you know, so maybe if at some point we could have another meeting where we could kind of have, we used to have like a big grid that had it all laid out, and then maybe we could kind of see what else is coming down the pike.
Yep, absolutely. We can put that into a workshop format.
I had mentioned too that we have much larger forecasting documents, and maybe we could put together like the next 3-year highlights next time we come around CIP or something like that, just so we can have a bigger, like a better picture of the forecasting that we're using. That might be good for all of the board to see. So,
yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
I agree with Cheryl on this, because we also had a bunch of money that's going towards our referendum towards this, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see that list, that shrunken list. So just curious on how that is. I got a question about football field. We do have a decent amount of money saved up for that, right?
Yep, approximately 679,000 set aside for that.
And are we using the same company for the turf that we did for the baseball fields and everything?
So given the size of that project, we'll go out and bid that.
Okay.
So they'll certainly have an opportunity to bid that, but I just wouldn't want to hand that over and say
Yeah.
yes or no.
Okay. All right.
When we did the football field the first time, was that used turf for whatever reason? I thought someone had said. Oh, I
No.
thought we'd gotten a deal. It came from somewhere.
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Now there's some folklore surrounding the field, but nothing like a fire sale used product.
All
or
right.
anything like that.
I also just realized I responded to you by shaking my head, and I should respond verbally so that everybody else can partake. So that is no. That is
Okay.
not.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Both say nay. All right. Motion carries. Second reading of the revised policy 421 entrance age.
So Dr. K is on with us tonight. If you have any questions, this is a second reading. She went through this with us the last time we were together. Dr. K, if you have anything to add, or board members, if you have any questions after we motion this through for discussion, here we go.
So Niglia moves to approve policy 421, entrance age.
Grabowski seconds.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Both say nay. Motion carries. Second reading of revised policy 342.7 services for English language learners.
Okay. Once again, second reading. We have Dr. K here for any questions after we motion this through. We discussed this one last week we were together.
Motion.
So Niglia moves to approve a revised policy 342.7 services for English language learners.
Grabowski seconds.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both say nay. C is moved forward and approved. Second reading of revised policy 348 graduation requirements.
Same story as before. We have another run through with this. If you recall from last time when we spoke, it was a correction. We're just making this reflect the changes we put into place a couple of years back.
Motion.
So Niglia moves to approve revisions to policy 348 graduation requirement.
Grabowski seconds.
Any discussion? In favor, all say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda is informational items. Oak Creek High School rebranding. Mr. Holler.
So we have some special guests here tonight to help us walk through this. Tonight, Mr. Holler is going to walk us through some cool stuff here. And I think Mr. Latai is on. I see Miss Mongan on there. We might have a couple of guest speakers tonight. So take it away.
Yep. So I've had it presenting, Marty. So jump on in, or Scott, jump on in and put the presentation on.
Yep.
Okay, Marty, you got that part of it?
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I want to just first thank Mr. Latai and Mr. Subak. They really spearheaded the majority of this project, but I'll just give a quick history and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Latai. So many of you know the logos and colors at Oak Creek High School over the years have gone through some changes, and obviously growing up in Oak Creek myself and those of you that have been in Oak Creek a long time, I think one of the issues that we've wanted to address for some time was figure out exactly what our official Oak Creek High School logos are. I remember when Sue Thompson, when I first got to the high school as athletic director, Sue Thompson, one of the things she asked me, she said, can you please come up with the actual colors of our high school and the actual logos? Because everywhere I look in Oak Creek, I see different knights. I see different versions of the OC, and it drives me crazy as a marketing teacher, which is what Miss Thompson's background was. So lo and behold, 7 years later, here that is. And I thank Mr. Latai and Mr. Subak for getting a lot of hands on deck, and they'll kind of walk you through what they did. But I think we did some really good stuff here that we want to share with the community and make sure that everyone's on the same page. And again, this isn't astrophysics by any means, but at the same time, it was something that was long overdue, and I think people appreciate what the work is here that we did. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Latai.
Can everybody see the slideshow?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I used to having 2 or 3 screens. I'm down to 1 in my basement. So just making sure. So a couple quick things. Like, again, this was like, I don't know how this all started. Candy asked me if I wanted to attend like a branding session down in Waterford, and I really didn't know Mr. Subak at all. But I know he's like very keen eye for this stuff. So we went down to it, and we got to kind of hear about like what different schools throughout the country were doing to rebrand their school. They shared like a little narrative about a school in Denver that was the Vikings, but it was like an inner city school, and none of the kids connected with the logo, the words, or the meaning. They made this like wholesale change, and we have like a great logo, and Scott will Mr. Subak will take you through that as well. And we know we didn't have to do like a lot of wholesale changes, as it was about like really focusing down on the specifics of like how to increase our brand. So both Mr. Holler and Mr. Subak were helpful in that. Other people I just want to name really quickly. Carrie Ferd, from like an English teacher who works with the journalism club. The town halls were involved in the feedback. We got teacher feedback early in the year. Laura Doro, one of our art teachers, kind of talked about like the different color schemes and the way things pop. So we just got like a lot of really great staff and student feedback. So this just wasn't just 3 people in a room making arbitrary decisions. It was a whole group effort, and I am really proud of everybody that contributed to that. I wanted to put that out there. So this brand kit slide you're seeing is something that Mr. Subak created. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth between me and him, but so you just kind of see the purpose of it. And I think, Mr. Subak, if you want to take over this part, like, you just do a really great job of kind of giving purpose around it.
Sure. I think that when you look at other schools and you see which ones do this well and which ones don't do their branding well, it really has a lasting impact, right? Like, you can see like when you drive down the road of like the cars that have like the right bumper sticker, the cars that have individuals sporting that apparel that you could say, hey, I know that's Arrowhead High School. I know that's Nicolay High School. We want to strive to be at that same level. It's the same reason when you walk outside of Starbucks, you can recognize instantly that logo without the word Starbucks even being on there. So, the whole purpose of this, we've touched on it before, we're really just striving for consistency, and we want to kind of have, that instant impact of like when you see the right color blue, when you see that OC, when you see some of our other work here, that you can clearly create association to our school, high quality learning, great athletics, great programs, all of the above. So, this is where we're kind of starting to kind of bring back the history of the brand, touch on the past a little bit, but kind of push us into a new era here.
Yeah, and another great person that was a part of this was Lindsay over at district office, and we've been talking with her about how to get this information out to people, how we can put it on our website. So Lindsay's been like a key component. So again, sharing these ideas across the board with a lot of people. So just like the history of the school, like we have so many my 6 months being new to the high school. I mean, every other teacher I feel like is an Oak Creek graduate or lives in Oak Creek. So there's some really strong roots there. And like both of Scott said, like we have a great background and a great foundation. It was all building forward for that. So one of the things that we did was figure out the color scheme. So Subak, through a lot of his research, has gotten like the Pantone colors. And one of the things that he can touch on for you is like when we make these improvements to our building, making sure that we have the right colors. When a club advisor or a coach goes to Scott, we can get them the exact colors, the exact logos, that they don't have to Google search it and stretch it out, that they'll have the exact needs that the exact materials they're going to need to do those things in the future.
A prime example, I'll jump in real quick, Marty, is you all been in our gym, and you all have probably noticed in the main gym that there's 3 different shades of blue going on in there. That's, to me, something that's moving forward, something that's easy to clean up. And it's just an example. If you look at our basketball court, you got navy blue on it. We don't have navy blue in our school colors. You look on the walls and the banners, there's 2 different shades of banners in there, which I'm working on fixing that. And you look at the blue line going around the main gym, that's a different shade of blue. So that's, again, something simple that moving forward we can work on to fix. Sorry, Marty.
No, it's great. And a great example today was like Scott and he's getting some record boards put up by the concession stands, and the company sent him like some looks at it. And now me and Scott are having a conversation like, is this the right color? Is this the right look? So it's getting us to look at those things on a deeper level. When we hang something up on our walls, we're doing with like a deep purpose and not just hanging something up so we can hang something up. If you look at the color brands, and one of the first things you're going to notice was that powder blue color. And we got some great feedback from town halls. It is a color that kind of goes back into the past of Oak Creek. Gold was another color that kind of brings back that Oak Creek feel, but there were some things about the yellow gold color with Franklin and things like that. We felt like the student response was powder blue. We thought it would be like a great accent color to bring in, and it's a kind of a recognizing the past as well. So I'm not sure if either of the Scotts want to jump in about that.
Yeah, it's a color that was around in the late 70s and 80s. You go back and you look at the first boys basketball team that ever made it to the state tournament. Powder blue was an accent color. In fact, I remember wearing those hand-me-down jerseys when I was a freshman on the basketball team many moons ago. So it was, and it's a color that's also been used by a few different groups and teams, and it's really popular color amongst the kids, and the kids really like that one. So again, it's not to say that black can't be used and gray can't be used and so on and so forth. We just wanted to get the right powder blue, so all of a sudden we don't see Oak Creek with like a teal shirt or something like that using that blue.
Yeah. And I know from like a marketing standpoint, Mr. Subak did a really good job of explaining to me like what the purpose of the coloring when it comes to the branding as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys said too, like having this whole branding system here, like we're not looking to make everything this powder blue and this black, but like to acknowledge that that's what teams have used, and to look at just an accent color for potential future designs and small tweaks and modifications. But like I said, personally, a lot of people that, when we talk about like the baseball team and the Autism Speaks jerseys, those are some of our most popular jerseys. I know that there's a lot of push for like our school store, to feature not just the regular royal blue and white colors, but to have some additional options as well.
So just some subtle changes from a color scheme point of view. This logo, we're not really sure who created this logo, but it is a fantastic logo. And there's really nothing like that out there. We've done a lot of deep research into Google, and there's really nothing else like it out there. It's just a great, like extremely versatile yet simple logo, and it's something that we're proud of. So adding those accent colors to give coaches and club advisors and people, youth teams, if they want to get involved, to give them a little bit of creativity with also staying like within the lines of what we'd like our brand to look like. So there's some examples like different variations, allowing creativity across the board from those that are involved. We did like a lot of research and finding out what other night logos. So these are all the other nights across the state and how they do their stuff. And as we think about our brand and our OC and our logo, we feel like we have something really strong, and we want to really work off that. So Knights is a common mascot name, but we know we wanted to take ours in a very specific direction. We did a lot of research. So these logos right here, I reached out to 2 or 3 different t-shirt companies, and these are all logos that they said they've used in the past for Oak Creek High School. And I think what we came down to was that though we have an amazing amount of advisors and coaches that want to help out, we really want to stop them just creating their own logo and throwing Oak Creek High School on it. We really want to have a certain brand, almost like in some ways, like you see kind of college campus a little bit, and allowing them some creativity, some flexibility, keeping them rooted to like the main aspects of what we are. So getting away from people just creating their own, kind of following a unified brand. One of the first things that you'll notice is the very popular logo on the left, which has been used for like a really long time. And I'm going to let kind of Subak take over because this is something he's got a really great understanding with. But even if you look at that OC, that's not the Creatos OC logo. But there is more of a branding, a bigger term, financial thing that is involved when using logos like these.
Yeah, I guess I've always been concerned about the legal liability. I know that this logo isn't primarily in use anymore by United States Army for their football programs and other athletics, but we just figured too that why even deal with the liability, and then also looking at not having the right color blue, and that OC, that famous interlocking OC, doesn't even quite doesn't look as balanced as it needs to be. So we just figured that we looked at all the other night logos across the country, across the state, and there's not really one that you say, hey, looks really that great that you're dying to have. So we wanted to really simplify it down. It makes it easier for vendors, makes it easy for everybody involved. Like I said, if you can never avoid legal liability, that's a good thing.
Right. And I think one again, finding that you like Oak Creek is a Ute community. Like if you click back and you look at Nicolet's logo, that second one on the left, and then you look at what we were using, you take away a cape and a mask, and it's the same exact logo. So it's about finding something that's unique to our community more above anything. Again, educating people that come in and like what to do and not to do, like correct OC, stretching it out, the color scheme, just helping with that. A long-term goal that we have that we've talked to Lindsay about is getting this information on our high school website. So when Holler has a new club advisor, when they hire a new coach, when somebody wants to create, like a student wants to create a t-shirt, we can say, click on this link. So Lindsay's going to help us with that. That's kind of like the last phase of this. Click on this link and they can go to a page where they can find every single Pantone color. They can find the right vectors, they can find certain fonts that we recommend, and they can have access to all those things. As we kind of wrap up the rest of the slideshow, is just like that's kind of the OC HS band logo. It's the traditional Oak Creek logo. Scott Subek is going to kind of go in and help out with components of like the plume on top. When I talked to Laura Doro, one of our art teachers here, says it's like a really difficult logo to replicate. It's not really easy to put on a jersey. We don't want to go away from it because it's a tradition. Our band uses it. It's got the roots of Oak Creek, so we're not going to go away from it. If people want to utilize it for like a throwback logo, we absolutely encourage them to do that. So then we thought about, okay, so we have our OC, like if our OC, interlocking OC is our Wisconsin W, what's our Bucky the Badger? If our OC is the Oklahoma University, and then their second logo is that buggy from the horse, that part, what is our secondary logo? So we did a lot of research, and that's where we found all these logos. And we had a couple students try to draw out some night heads. Nothing was really picking up any traction. We got some feedback from Coach Parr and some other coaches in our building to ask their thoughts, and we just couldn't get past anything. And Mr. Subak really wrapped it up really well for me. He says, if we create a new night head, what's going to happen probably in 5 to 10 years, someone's just going to create a different one. So we wanted to take it in a different direction. So we looked at this original coat of arms seal. You'll see it outside of Ms. Mongan's office. It's like the original school seal. It's what's on their academic diploma. But I know like Ms. Darrow said this to me too, like that's not a logo, that's a drawing. But there was a component about it that we really did like. And so I'll take you to that trip. So you'll see the picture right there that's outside of Ms. Mongan's office. And we looked at the academic shield. And we thought that was something interesting. And when I was doing some research and talking, finding some different talking points, getting feedback, we talked about how can we play off that shield. And obviously Oak Creek is the Knights. And I think lots of times when you have these rebranding, you want to have a story behind it. And the thing that I find out when it talks, I was reading a leadership book and it talks about the power of a knight doesn't come from the strength of its sword, but it comes from the strength of its shield. And a knight carries armor and it carries a helmet. It carries a sword to protect himself, but a knight carries a shield to protect other people, to protect the people behind him. And I really like that story because like one thing I've come to notice about Oak Creek is that people are very protective of this like small big town, and people are very protective of the roots here. And so we kind of wanted to play off that shield component. So one of the new logo concepts we came up with was using that great OC logo, but incorporating the shield and that third color of that light blue. Mr. Subak had mentioned this to me, and I wanted to mention to you guys when he talked about Starbucks. Like when you first see that shield, you're not going to know it's Oak Creek, so that's why we wanted to stick the OC on it. But hopefully over time, as people get familiar with it, you can take the Starbucks off the Medusa head. Eventually, you can take the OC off the shield, so it becomes two standalone logos. I'm not sure if Mr. Holler, Mr. Subak, you guys have anything to add to that component?
No, I mean, Marty, you summed it up really well. It's a good job of kind of capturing what it means to be a knight. I like how you phrase it. I think that's a story and kind of a reference that coaches and advisors can hit on. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I'll add is, like I said, we didn't want to take away from any groups that were really high on the traditional logos. So by all means, they're still going to have their ability to use those. But this was a really popular look. And, I agree with Marty. You see so many different knight heads out there and so many different knights and so on and so forth. And so many of them are cheesy and corny looking. And this really has got a little bit of class to it, in my opinion. And I really like the way it all came together, and credit to Mr. Subak and his students for what they did here.
Yeah, absolutely. So then as we kind of like wrap it up for you guys, is a way that like pushing forward, they want to keep doing these things. And again, a part of it is like educating the staff to educate the kids, been getting the kids involved in it. So like putting it on the website, we want to give them great examples. So here's just a couple of really great examples of, the Armory OC Kind is an initiative that was kind of launched in the NGC for all of our good activities that we do out in the community. I love the one on the bottom left. That's Miss Ferg from the Journalism Club. Like it was about taking our logo and just making a slight little twist to it to add to her club. Obviously, then you have like Knights Visions and Knights Construction, which are kind of these well-established groups, and but it kind of stays in line with what we're doing. So uniform, getting that uniform brand behind it.
I like it.
And then last couple things, like we've even talked about how can we update our high school website to reflect the work that we've done. We did a yard sale sign and half the proceeds go to the Oak Creek Salvation Army. And so that's another way we're going to kind of debut the shield and that new look. Scott's even talked about, like, as we go further into this, offering different fonts for people as well. One of the stronger conversations we had of like school words. When I gave you that example of that community in Denver about like a different setting, that you had like school words. And lots of times when you see school words, you think of like at the elementary level, like it's like be kind, be respectful, be an eagle, things like that. That stuff doesn't really play as strongly in the high school. So these are kind of the big taglines we've been using this year. And it's been the striving ever to be better, which is the school fight song, but we really have kind of cut it down to striving ever. You Matter is like a big initiative that we've really pushed out with the staff with some of the messages that we send out to the staff on a weekly basis. And then obviously Go Knights. So those are just like taglines and phrases. We're getting some banners created based off the branding we've done, push those initiatives out as well. Overall, like I've just been really pleased, and like Mr. Zubak's been great for this. He is like the point person. He has done like a lot of this work. Scott's done a lot in terms of like getting the historical piece into it and drawing others. I mean, I personally I grew up in West Dallas, and one of my like least favorite things about growing up in West Dallas was that we had two high schools, and there are two high schools that are not that great separately. That's why I really enjoy working in Oak Creek, because you have this good sized community with one high school with one uniform look and brand. So I think it's a great strength to work off of. So this has just been like a really great process, and we just wanted to kind of share it with you guys. So thanks to all those helpers, and they did a really great job.
Just want to thank Marty and Scott for all their work on this. They did an amazing job, and this is long overdue, like I said, and I think they did a really nice job of putting it all together, and really appreciative of everything they did.
Yeah, I like to say thank you to obviously Scott, Marty, Scott, and Candy and everyone else involved. I really do think that we had so many different colors and symbols, and it kind of eliminates all that. And I agree with you guys on that. It comes down to, obviously we have certain colors. My question for you is, are we going to eventually start, like I look in the parking lot, like all on the light posts, we added all that like last year. Are we going to change? You know what I'm talking about, Scott? Are we going to change any of that? Okay, I was just curious.
No, that actually has that coat of arms on it, and it has the academic pieces in there.
Okay.
So down the road, eventually, the company that we bought those from said they're good for 8 years. So if I'm still around then we can address it. But no, I think we're good there. But you're right, Frank and Marty hit on this. The new signage that will be going up in the high school will reflect these new colors and these new logos and whatnot. So yeah, we're not going around tearing down everything that we have. But as it runs its life course, we'll definitely replace it with this stuff.
Nice job. It's really exciting.
I just want to put my 2 cents in too, as somebody who ran Spirit Club for years and kind of set the tone for putting out school clothing with logos and stuff. I was a little nervous when I heard this because that Oak Creek blue is near and dear to my heart as well. And I'm really pleased and really happy with what's taken place. And I love the philosophy of the shield. That really kind of speaks to me as well. So I kudos to everybody on that. I think you guys have done a great job. A couple questions I have is what's going to be done for teams that already have uniforms that maybe have some of the older logos on them? Are they going to, like, as it comes time for them to be replaced, will they do it then? Or is it something that they have to change ahead of time? Is there going to be a a process where uniforms and stuff have to go through somebody to be approved to make sure that they have the correct logo and everything on them?
Yeah, so I can answer that. Yes, you're right, Cheryl. As uniforms come up, and for those of you that don't know, we do have a uniform rotation. I use funds. Yeah, I have a separate uniform rotation funds, and 3 different programs get new uniforms for the varsity level every single school year. So to answer your question, yes, those have to get approved by me. So as we move on, each section here, or each year, each school year, I should say, and each 3 new teams get their uniforms, we'll make sure that they have the right Pantone colors for those uniforms. We'll make sure that if they're going to use the OC, they have everything they need, and if they're going to use that shield. But yeah, it'd be a daunting task to try to go in and replace everything at this time. But to be perfectly honest with you, there's really not a ton of teams that have. Track was one. Boys track was consistently using Navy, and that was one that was kind of a coach's preference at the time, and we've started to steer away from that with a new coach. And yeah, so I'm not overly concerned about it, Cheryl, because you're gonna see that's kind of the next piece of this is when we work with Lindsay is we're not going to be able to stop some youth teams from if they go to Berghart's and they like a certain night. I mean,
Right.
that's out of our control, but what we can do is try to educate the PTOs at the elementary levels. We can try to educate the middle school principals and their folks and do our best to get the message out. Like here, if you're running a youth team, if you're going to run a 4th grade girls basketball team, here's what Oak Creek High School is using. Feel free to use it. We're not making money on it or anything like that. But we want people in the community to all have the OC, not one bumper sticker that's got an OC this wide and ones that got one this wide, which we all know exist. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, two of those OCs were old crummy baseball ones that I had on different, hats and things like that. So I'm excited about this as well.
And
What
I think
about-
Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
What about the some of the stores? I noticed in the stuff that you had, there was some talk about Target and Myers, and I think Walgreens also sells Oak Creek wear. Are you going to work with them so that they have our approved logo?
Yep, I was waiting to make sure everything was okay with all of you, and that's something I can work with Andy Cromie on. We do have a couple of agreements out there with some local businesses that are allowed to sell our stuff. So I will basically, as soon as this is a go, get them this new information as well, because you're right. You go to Walgreens, you'll see a night cup with 2 different, you'll see one cup that's got this logo, then you go to Target and you'll see a different night. Again, I'd like to think they would want to use the correct logo. So that'll be my next step.
Okay, thank you. Great
And
job.
I've had like a conversation with Sue Thompson about like she'd love to get access to some of this stuff so we can even kind of trickle it down into the middle schools. I know that was one conversation we have. So we can, I mean, in my mind, I'd love to see, like, I think it'd be amazing to see a community from kindergarten up. Everybody's wearing OC. I think that'd be a great thing to work towards. So,
And we've talked about that for years because like in a household, it'd be nice if that color scheme was coordinated. Like if you got 3 kids, like some of us do, and you hand the clothes down, it'd be nice if they can last all the way through, right? So all of our elementary schools have their own mascots, but if the color palette was the same, we've talked about that over the years too. So
yeah.
One
Good
question
job,
I had, I don't know what the history is, but I know like most of the police cars in Oak Creek have a night on them. I don't know whether or not they just chose to do that. They chose to partner with the schools, but would we, again, I'm a huge fan of the shield. I think a lot of the night logos look cheesy on the cop cars as well, but I didn't know whether or not anyone was going to reach out to them to maybe say, this is a shield. It works well with the police. I think to have them maybe change some of those decals.
That's a great idea. Yeah,
So
I
work with PD regularly, and like my favorite is the classic OC logo, but I like the shield too.
Yeah.
And if we have some like high quality digital images, like some of the folks on the conference here have talked about, I'm sure we can share them with local law enforcement too. They had talked about Lindsay incorporating those high quality digital images for the website. If people need to grab them, that'd be a great way for us to share. So
Perfect.
I would have a couple thoughts. One is to follow up on the question about the elementary school mascots. I hear you saying that you're hoping to incorporate that to everybody, but I also don't hear any comments of trying to move away from every school having their own mascot. And as long as every school has their own mascot,
No.
how are we going to align
No, no,
design?
no. Let's not get carried away here. Like our elementary schools are very proud of their local
Yeah.
brands, their local mascots, right? That'd be a whole different line of discussion, right? Like we
Yeah.
have so many logos, so many like points of pride, songs, like murals. Let's just stay to the high school for the moment. And if
Okay.
East is interested in making sure they have the right like blues and whites on their shirts that they produce, that my comment was only to say that that's nice in a family when you've got hand-me-downs, at least the colors match. But I don't see the I don't see the different buildings changing all their logos to some sort of like Knights of the Round Table kind of theme or anything like that. So
thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
My other question is sort of more of a here I go again, Jane, I can't help it. So I have like 8 years of art school, and my question about the logo is
And
well, it's more
that
of a
was
comment.
never our intention. We don't.
Uh-oh.
What?
I think Mr. Holler froze.
We lost him.
So my question about the design was more of a concern about its scale or its ability to scale. So I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but in the presentation here at a small scale, because the line around the O and the C is such a small proportion to the blue of the letter and the shield, the OC fades into the shield and it becomes a blue blob. And my concern is just that it is about the scaling of that design. At a small scale, it's going to become blob-like. And my concern is that if it's on like a bumper sticker, then from a distance, it's just going to look like a blue blob, and you're not going to be able to see the definition of the OC on the shield. I love the shield. I love the OC. The two of them together, to me, has some design issues that need to be addressed. But I'm not asking you to address them. I'm just telling you. I'm just raising my hand and saying I'm worried about that in the long term.
Can we pull up the shield in the OC again?
Yeah, this would be like a Mr. Subak. He's very good at this kind of stuff. So go ahead, Mr. Subak.
Yeah, and I don't think I'll be able to solve it today. And I think it's like a great point to bring up. This is like all the stuff that we need people to bring up and talk about so we can avoid any further issues. I think that first, I know that we have all of these logos and all these graphics are vectorized. So they, if you're going to put them on a billboard or if you're going to put them on a piece of paper, they should scale properly. I do understand your point about, there are some thinner outlines when the OC is adjoined to the night shield. And then, I think we might have to look at it on a case-by-case basis of, maybe on, a jersey or a shirt, maybe it's visible, but like you said, maybe on a bumper sticker, maybe that's where we won't incorporate the shield, where we'll just stick with either just the shield or just the OC. So we kind of have to maybe pick and choose and try to find some of those pain points of, maybe it won't work well in this area, but, I can also try to simplify it a little bit more and maybe develop it a little bit. But I think maybe just look at the mediums that it's on and see which ones it works for and which ones it doesn't.
Yeah, I think just an awareness of that is what I'm asking. Thank you.
So
I appreciate
it. And that's like just a small example of how great Mr. Subak has been in this whole process to kind of really examine those things. So hot pink and orange were never going to be options. So did a really good job. So
I think it looks great.
Well, thank you, everyone. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, school handbooks revisions.
Okay, so it's that much anticipated point in the year when we talk about the bullet pointed handbook updates. So Annalise is going to carry us through those tonight.
All right, good evening. First, I have to thank our principals for looking through our handbooks. I didn't bring any out for you to pass around the room tonight. I figured we didn't really want to spread germs, but they're all online if you want to review anything from this year's. And then I'm just going to go through, like Dan said, like he's done in the past, a couple bulleted points of the adjustments. But overall, there's not really anything big that's being adjusted this year. It's a couple minor things and changes that have come up. So things that you're going to see, and this is for all our handbooks. So we have a 4K handbook, an elementary, East, West, and Empower, which are relatively the same, and then also high school. So each year you see the staff updates, the calendar updates, any policies throughout the year, like John had done an update on early college credit a couple months ago, like that would be cross-referenced in a handbook. So you'll see those typical changes that take place. Any fees that Andy's brought through the board, those always get updated and make sure those are ready to go. One other change that Andy's talked about a bit this year that's in all handbooks is the message that goes out every Friday to families for the lunch program, just in regards to what their balance is. And then also there's a second message that goes out on Wednesdays if their balance is coming close to or has fallen below that 0 point. So that's something in all handbooks, and also an update to just that communication, which has gone well thus far, especially now that we're not in school for lunches. So those are the bigger changes. The update for when parents keep their children home, Lisa's worked with the Department of Health. That's just an adjustment from 100 to 100.4. So those are the updates throughout all the handbooks. Then you'll see a couple bulleted points for the different levels. At elementary, there was a point to offer clarity to intra-district. So if you kind of think through the last couple years, intra-district timeline is about that third week of August, and registrations a couple weeks prior to that. So just a reminder to families that you register at your home school and your boundaries. And then if an intra-district transfer is approved, that adjustment will be made at a district level. Another update there, and most of these Raptor updates came through last year, so this was just one additional spot in the elementary handbook to add a reminder to bring your ID in for the Raptor system if you're volunteering or visiting the school, even for parents to do that. The 3-week remedial summer school we didn't have last summer, don't have again this summer, so we made sure that was removed from the handbook. We added event invites. So what this pertains to for the most part is, like, I remember back to elementary school when I had my first birthday party with friends, and my parents were very specific that if you're going to invite friends, the whole class is invited. And so it's just putting in language to make sure that happens. Like if an invite is going to be handed out at school, it needs to go to everybody in the class. Anything short of that, it needs to be mailed or hand delivered outside of the school and outside of the school day. Okay. So just trying to look at that with a fair lens. It had come up at a school this year, and it was like, it's a really good point. We should have that in there for our students. So that's the elementary updates. Middle school updates, there were some updates to curricular areas with the world language adjustments from last year with their intro classes they take, their academic and career planning that they do with the school counselors. The next one is real familiar. It's from our meeting last month when we talked about the change of the school board award to the middle school outstanding night. It goes along well with the logo conversation, that carrying through of the night piece. So that language was changed, the school board award removed, the middle school outstanding night added in, and the criteria for that. Also, the middle school had updated the language about healthy food, just reminding them if they're going to have snacks in school, it needs to follow the healthy food guidelines. That was something that was already updated last year in the elementary handbooks, so just followed course there. And then in the discipline matrix, no major changes to it. In a couple of the steps within different discipline items, they added restorative practice, which I know you've heard a great deal about, which is kind of aligns to our SEL goals and how when students do have a consequence, we've also partnered that with time with the school counselors or maybe the teacher or whoever it might be where the incident kind of was, to make sure that we're back on the right path and have a plan to have a more successful opportunity moving forward in school. So that was all the middle school updates. And then the high school, again, you'll see the outstanding night added. They removed the Renaissance Award and also the school board award. And like the middle school, put in the criteria for that outstanding night award, or recognition, we should say. And then also in their discipline matrix, they already had some of the restorative practice language, but they have used a no pass list more regularly as part of their different levels of consequence. So we've added the pass list to a couple of the different discipline spots. So basically that means for a regulated amount of time, they won't be allowed to walk in the hall during classes. And there's like specific stipulations for a certain time to just kind of hone in on the area they are in the building until we get some of the behaviors or other things successfully in place. So those are the only changes. Like I said, nothing real major. A couple things that just align across the board, the new recognitions, and that's really the big pieces.
Annalee, if you could just maybe send us separately a list of, or send us the discipline matrix. I would just like to refamiliarize myself with it. And I know we've got at least one new board member. So it'd be just nice if we could have an update on that. Maybe just send it to us so we can look at it before the next meeting.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you, Annalee.
Thanks.
2021 preliminary budget presentation.
So last time we visited this, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Seems very muffled to me. Last time we were together on a budget was April 6th, I believe, or right around the beginning of April. We discussed some changes that had occurred since January. So what I've brought for you is an updated version of that same sheet. Let's go to the middle part, which is where most people are going to focus their eyes. The preliminary budget as it stands is $211,000 to the good. That's right around the same amount we were last time, which I believe was about $206,000. This budget includes the technology integrator specialist that was earlier approved tonight in the consent agenda. So it's important to note that. And we've had some personnel changes that you've seen come over the last couple of board meetings. All of those have been updated, as well as people who have transitioned from no health insurance to insurance or back off, things like that. So this is as close as we are today. Just a couple of notes at the top. You'll notice administrators, the dollar amount has changed a little bit. That just is simply how we had coded an empower position. And with Bill Kajawa resigning, that position will move back to a teacher position. So it's just a trade in the dollars moving from admin to teachers. So not a reduction of a position in the district, just the way it's allocated.
Yep.
We've added an instructional aide at the high school. We've reduced a secretary at the high school, as you're aware of. Buildings and grounds, that added our individual from last month as well as in there. So all in all, we're really good. This still includes a 4% health insurance increase that we're predicting. So even though insurance itself has slowed for many, many businesses because everything has been so focused on COVID, there's still lots of our year to go through where we have to evaluate that. And so things like elective procedures, really for almost everybody nationwide, have gone down entirely for March and April. Those things will start to come back into play now. Doctor's visits will start to come back, but we're still waiting and looking at the year to determine how will COVID affect our health plan, if at all. And ultimately, while we still have to ride out this year, we're probably looking at 2 years on this as well and kind of seeing how that will affect our health plan. Because only one or two big instances will have a really big effect on the health plan. What this does not, I should also add, this also includes our educator, approximately 1% to run the educator plan. So keeping our new staff in and then our high needs staff and making sure we're able to retain those individuals. But it does not include any raises district-wide for anything other than the teacher retention plan. As stated before, and I can show you at the bottom, Fund 10 increase and Fund 27. Well, I must have got cut off on this, but it's right around $815,000 or so. If we put 1.81%, which is CPI, in across the board, we're at $211,000. I'm pretty confident we'll be able to transfer our Fund 38 payment, which is somewhere around 360,000. But we need to be really cautious moving into the new year without having any guidance from the state. Revenues are down like 870 million or something like that at this point in time. So that's 10 months into the fiscal year of where they were predicted to be. We know that education is the biggest pot or piece of pie in the pot or puzzle. So like we have to be really cautious. Dan and I have been privy to a whole bunch of meetings that have said you should run approximately 3 budget scenarios. At this point in time, we're running the budget scenario as if everything is status quo, but we're tracking what the cost would be if we have to have a reduction. So just to provide that to you, if the state were to reduce either the revenue limit or categorical aid by $50 a student, so just $50, for us, that's about $309,000 we'd have to figure out. So if they were to reduce it by 100, that'd be $618,000 we'd have to figure out to balance. And so we show 211 here. We have about 360 we'll be able to prepay debt. So that puts us at about $570,000 to play with to determine if the state is going to have any reductions on us. And so everything else, and we've communicated with OCEA teachers union as well, that until October 15th happens and the state has determined what state aid will look like and any changes, we're like status quo as far as raises are concerned. And I can't anticipate bringing that any sooner than knowing those items as well. I just don't think it'd be prudent of us. Ultimately, in the circle that I live in of other business managers, the bigger talk is starting to be around not necessarily 2020, 21, but 2021, 22, when our next biennium comes up, and really taking a look at that. And so I think we're looking at a cycle where we're probably 2 to 3 years into some lean times, very similar to when Act 10 happened, and trying to figure that particular piece out. So I don't want us to jump too far down the rabbit hole. We know that every reduction, again, is probably about $300,000 or every factor of that $50. And when the state comes up with anything, if they do, Dan and I are fully prepared to bring something to the board with some options to kind of wrestle with to determine what do we as a school board and district want to do, or how do we want to proceed with that?
Got a question about Fund 80. Is that summer school, right?
Fund 80 is youth programs, so recreation.
Recreation.
Can I just mention one thing, Frank? Thank you for pointing it out. I plan to mention it tonight. I have summer school boxed in up here at about $306,000. Earlier this week, we made the determination that summer school will go virtual. So we will definitely see a savings there. But at the time that was decided, we had not laid out the exact plans of what that was. So I boxed it because I knew we were going virtual, but I did not have time to cost it out because we need to determine what is that exactly going to look like. So we will have savings there as well for sure, because we won't be running all of the courses that we've run in the past. The state has given some guidance that essentially credit for the classes that we don't have credits at the elementary, but things like math and reading will be allowed to count for membership, but some enrichment classes that we've had in the past will not be. And so we're wrestling with what are we going to provide and how are we going to do that?
Yeah, because is it Fund 85 or 80? But if any money that we are in a deficit does go right to the taxpayers, correct?
That's Fund 80. So everything's for youth programs.
And so if it was, we were thinking of like a negative 225,000, negative 300,000 bucks. I know you and I talked about that.
Yeah. So I don't have a specific estimate, but I would garner us to be probably around $100,000 or $200,000 in the red. Offhand, that's probably
2 to 3 cents.
3 cents.
Household. That's I figured out 3 cents a household.
3 cents on the 1,000. Yeah.
Yep. So not a huge, but still something to think about. But I'm glad you brought that up because I know we're talking about this year, but really as a budget, we really got to be I'm glad we're going to be concerned and look at this with a fine tooth. because the next 2-3 years are going to be a big challenge for us, because not only state-wise, but even local taxes, because people are going to have a hard time paying mortgages right now. I can tell you it's like the 20-some% right now, but we really got to be really, I'm glad that we're just status quo until we get further, obviously, notification from the state. But we really got to look at every penny that comes through us. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, any other questions?
Just wanted to ask about the refunded spring and summer programs. Does that reflected in here? I know there was like 1,400 refunds that were made, right?
So those come from Fund 80. So this is essentially our operating budget to run school. So our Fund 10 and our Fund 27. So Fund 80 is not in here, but yes, every registration that was provided for Aspire through March 16th or after March 16th was refunded. Every class that Heather had set up for the spring, most of summer has already been refunded as well. Our facilities are required to be shut down through June 30th per the governor's order. I can't imagine him lifting that on schools, although I know they're starting the small rollouts of other things. Following June 30th, we don't know what that looks like either until we get further guidance. I can't imagine it's wide open and flood the buildings and run it. So youth programs probably will not have any summer programming as well, and unless it's some really late August something or other that's run. The fall is kind of where we're putting our eggs in the new basket to try to figure out what that's going to look like.
Yep.
Do like the spring athletics for, sorry, go ahead, Amy.
Just a quick question about the lunches. You know, a lot of people probably had money still in their child's lunch account. Does that money stay in there, or are we refunding that as well?
So lunch money is only refunded upon request. So typically seniors get their money back, but families, that money just stays and rolls year to year. Lunches are a great thing, though. We have applied for a couple of different programs for summer. So we started off with what's called SSO, or Summer Seamless Option. That was kind of the initial guidance given to DPI for schools trying to provide lunches. It did provide a reimbursement for all the lunches we made. So the federal reimbursement rate on that was somewhere around like $3.50. We've subsequently applied for SFSP, which is summer feeding school program or something like that, which pays about $4.07 for every meal. So we are getting reimbursed for the meals that we are providing, which will help us cover the staff that we've decided to pay. Our biggest source of revenue when school is running is federal reimbursement for students that qualify for free and reduced. So that covers the vast majority of our costs. Purchased meals are pretty small in comparison. So this will give us an option to hopefully have Fund 50 come out balanced at the end, and we call it even when all is said and done. And so Jill Thaler with Taher has really worked really hard to get us through those and answer questions at the state level to make sure that we're able to claim that. So we're providing a service. It's great for the community, but we're able to recoup some of that cost with it as well. At this point, we haven't costed it all out, but we should be pretty close to even on it.
Andy, just a point of clarification. Did you say that on the Fund 80, if there's a deficit, it would be 3 cents per thousand or 100,000?
Well, I don't want to pigeonhole us into that because we have to do the final cost. But if we are about $200,000 in the red, it'd be about 3 cents per thousand on the mill rate. So
Okay.
a $200,000 home would be about $60.
Okay.
It's important to note we have no recourse outside of levy for that. DPI does not allow for anything else to occur.
Correct.
Or sorry, $6. Sorry.
Yeah, not 60.
$6. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for the clarification.
That's what I said. It's not a lot, but it adds up after a while.
Yes. Yes. No, about $6.
Okay.
For $200,000 home.
Is the line in here that's athletics and activities, would that be where like high school athletes for spring sports, if they had paid for those sports and now since they're not having them, reimbursing that? Is that line
So that is simply to pay coaches and activity advisors, middle school through high school. If you were to go to the left-hand side, you'll see student fees, 292 student fees. That would account for both school fees and athletics activity fees fall under that particular bucket.
And are coaches for spring sports being paid?
They are, yes.
Okay.
That's a tough one.
Why
Yeah.
why are we paying spring coaches if we don't have any spring sports?
Right. I have a,
I mean, go ahead, Dan.
I don't think Mr. Holler's still on this call, but the clarity from WIA on what's happening with them has not been immediate or forthcoming. They're still talking about a 30-day season. There's still virtual coaching that's being allowed. There's all sorts of like different elements of this that go beyond, well, they just called it off, like, let's just cancel all that money. This is much more complicated than just striking a line item, given the total lack of direction that those coaches, many of whom have been extremely loyal to us for a very, very long time and have continued to digitally support their athletes. This is something that we just kind of, Scott could weigh in on a little bit more later, but we've continued this one. So
Yeah,
It was
I mean,
to help honor the work that was done prior to
the season.
being
Yeah.
canceled as well.
Correct.
yeah. I mean, I think it's
It's a good question.
If there's an expectation of continued
Mhm.
activity
Mhm.
around the act of coaching,
Right.
then it makes total sense.
No,
I don't have any.
that's an excellent question for clarification.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I
it's
do
just-
know my daughter does track. The coach is doing Zoom meetings with the athletes, and they
Yep.
did mention as well a possible July track season.
Right.
In fact, Palm's tryouts are Friday and Saturday and Sunday virtual tryouts.
Right. So it is kind of impressive how a lot of our athletics and activities staff have pivoted to work in this new world too. It's just we haven't had a in-depth conversation about it unless you have an athlete in your home, like a varsity athlete in your home like Jane does. So, but a good question.
Yep. Any other questions? Thanks, Andy. Upcoming school board meeting tentative agendas.
So we're going to be talking budget pretty consistently from here on out. So you see budget items on both the May and the 1st June board meeting there. We have the science adoption that we spent a great deal of time discussing throughout the spring here, back around again for more discussion and an update from our teaching and learning team regarding the work done in the interim between when last we spoke and when we get to that meeting. And Lee will be back with handbook clarifications. We've also got a couple of policy updates and the technical college programs enrollments for semester. And Scott will be back to talk about our WIAA annual membership. And as you all know, it's a busy time of year. I wouldn't be surprised to see this agenda grow a little bit as Frank and I kind of muddle through the other elements we need to get on here before end of year. But budget, big high points going forward. So.
All right.
Okay.
All right, the board will consider motion to convene into executive session per Wisconsin statutes 19.851C and Wisconsin statutes 118.22 parentheses 3 for purposes of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility for purposes of conducting a private conference related to the purpose of non-renewal of a teacher contract and consideration of issuance of a notice of a non-renewal for a teacher contract.
Grabowski motions to go into executive session.
Millat second.
Okay, roll call. Jane,
Yes.
Mark, Darren,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Leah,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. We're all going to cancel out of this meeting and close down the window. Thank you.